Hi everyone, today we are going to discuss the activity that you needed to complete on week 11, which covered understanding similarities and differences. Now, as the name suggests, this subtopic introduces and exposes you to the skills of talking about different places and especially describing their similarities and describing their differences to one another, right? Now, in this activity, you were given two locations. Now, two universities to be exact, which were Bristol University and Durham University. All right. Now, these two universities, they compare in terms of the dates they were founded, number of students, average annual rent for accommodation, percentage of overseas students, and their international airport. Now, each of these components presents some similarities and differences which you needed to highlight, and that was the purpose of the activity itself, right? Now, let's do a quick recap on how to go about doing this. Now, when describing similarities, there are two ways that you can do it, all right? Now, number one, you can use the structure as blank as. Now, in that blank, insert the appropriate adjective that both items share. For instance, as big as brings the meaning of sama besar, as pretty as brings the meaning of sama cantik, as amazing as means sama hebat. So when two items that you compare share the similar adjective, use as blank as. That's number one. Now, number two, use the structure both blank are blank. I repeat, both blank are blank. Now, in the first blank, fill it in with the items that you compare. For instance, if you compare two universities, just put universities there and make sure that it's in plural form. That's the first blank. The second blank is for the adjective that both items share. For instance, big. So to make that into a sentence, it becomes both universities are big. As simple as that. All right. Now, when describing differences, on the other hand, simply use comparative structure that we have just recently covered. Right now, for instance, UITM is bigger than Unimas. The black car is faster than the white car. For adjectives that cannot have er at the end, simply add more right before the adjective, the word more. For example, Unimas is more beautiful than UITM. All right. Now, lastly, you can also describe differences by using the structure not as blank as. Blank is filled with the appropriate adjective. For instance, Sabah is not as big as Sarawak, or Nilofa is not as pretty as Fazura. All right. Now, when coming up with comparisons about two or more items, remember that you can use all the skills that we have covered. Now, let's discuss the answers that you have shared in the activity. All right. Now, um, as you can see on the screen, those that is the table that uh, we were supposed to be looking at during for the activity. And as I've mentioned earlier in this video, there are a few components that we are looking at when it comes to comparing these items. For example, the dates they were founded, the number of students, and so on and so forth, as you can see listed down in the table there. All right. Now, let's talk about the similarities first. The first similarity that you might have highlighted, or we can highlight, is Durham is almost as old as Bristol because both universities were founded in the 1800s. Now, in this particular sentence, there are two structures that have been used to describe similarities. The first one is the use of as blank as I've mentioned before. And in this case, the adjective that is used is as old as. All right, as you can see stated in the example, Durham is as old as Bristol, and it is followed by the reason why both of them are old. All right, and because both universities were founded in the 1800s. Okay. Now, the second similarity that we can highlight is using the structure both blank are what, or both blank have what. Okay, in this case, both universities have the similar average annual rent for accommodation, which is £5,000. Now, remember when you, uh, it doesn't matter if you are talking about similarities or differences, if what you talk about or what you highlight involves numbers or percentage or anything that involves figures, it would be really helpful if you can highlight or if you can point out what's the percentage or what's the figure that we are talking about. For example, in number two, uh, because their similarity involves the annual rent for accommodation, which is £5,000, it would be really good that £5,000 is actually highlighted in the similarity, as you can see in the example. All right, so these are the two similarities that you can highlight in the description for both of these universities. Okay, now let's look at the differences. The first difference that we can talk about is Durham University is older than Bristol. Now, as I've mentioned before, one of the easiest ways that you can use to highlight differences is by using comparative structure, which is the adjective added with er followed by the word than. Now, make sure that you are comparing two items there. And in this case, Durham is older than Bristol. Again, as I've mentioned earlier, it would be really helpful if you can include the figure that we're talking about here. In this particular sentence, it's very simple, but it would have been really good if you can say Durham is older than Bristol because Durham was founded in 1832 while Bristol was founded in 1876. But if you can cross it out, if you cross it out, uh, it still presents you with a very clear difference already. So no problem there. That's number one. Number two, Bristol has more students than Durham. Bristol has more students than Durham. Now, different with the structure of the first difference, this difference uses the structure of more what than. Again, I've mentioned this earlier on, more what than. Even though in this case, it's not using the adjective, it's just stating in what terms they are different, but it's still using the structure of talking about differences, which is more what than. Okay, again, it would be really good if you can include how many students are more students than what. Okay, so here Bristol has more students than Durham because Bristol has 21,000 students, while Durham has 15,000 students. But even if you cross them out, it doesn't make it less of a difference. It's still a difference. Okay, so difference number three is Bristol's percentage of overseas students is not as high as Durham's, the third method of describing differences, which is not as blank as. All right, and in that blank, you insert the appropriate adjective. Okay, in this case, not as high as. Bristol's percentage of overseas students is not as high as Durham's because Bristol has 13% uh, international students, while Durham has 21% uh, international students. Okay, and number four over there is actually a bonus. Okay, the fourth difference that we can actually highlight from the table. Durham has an international airport, while Bristol does not have an international airport. All right. Okay. So I hope the explanation is clear. If you have anything to add on, or if you have any question about uh, coming up with similarities or differences, or if you think my answers are wrong and you can present me with a better similarities or differences, do let me know. We have the Telegram group, we have the WhatsApp group, or you can email me about anything. And if you're right, I will highlight it in the upcoming video. All right. So until then, thank you very much. Thank you.